And welcome back. As we go ahead and look at how to go ahead and program a switch example, and in this one we're going to go ahead and look at how to do this with a string. So last time of course we looked at a integer example, that was part of our lesson, but let's do this with a string, and it's going to be very similar. So that's not going to be super hard for us to program this, and I went ahead and got some code started for us. And so what I did is I'm going to enter a name of student in your group using string student names kb.x. So we're going to get this from the keyboard. Our switch is the student name because we want this to be what are we testing to see if something is equal to it. And I went ahead and added our default switch in here so that we can say, hey, this student isn't in my group. So let's go ahead and add some case statements. What are some examples of students that might be in our group? So let's just go ahead and do a case, and then we can add that. Now with a string, if we had this like with a number for us, like case 1, and we had colon, etc., but we have a string here, which means we have to use quotations to indicate this. So let's just go ahead and have a string called Casey. I'll use a colon, hit enter, and then I might add this with, for example, a system.out.println, welcome to the group. And I'll just put Casey since we know this is the individual we're looking for. And then we can simply just break that off. And that establishes this as a case option. And if I just go ahead and run my program real quick, enter a name of my student in the group, let's just go ahead and put in Casey. You can see we get welcome group Casey. If I go ahead and rerun it, and let's just go ahead and put in, let's say, Billy, you can say, hey, Billy isn't in my group. And that is all that we really need to establish a switch statement. And if we want to go ahead and add additional cases, I can easily just come here, enter. I'm going to tab this over, and let's do case, and let's go ahead and add another one in here. Let's go ahead and make this kid, let's go ahead, this one be Johnny. All right, so Johnny is now in here, and we're going to go ahead and add him a system.out.println, and just say, here comes Johnny. And then if we don't break this, if I put case and I'm just put Johnny, a little different spelling, system.out.println, here's Johnny with his slick moves. And then we add our break statement. And again, this is why we gotta be careful we use our break statements, because if I go ahead and enter in Johnny, you'll see we get both options here. We get here comes Johnny, and here comes Johnny with his here's Johnny with his slick move. So again, it's very important that we make sure we add our break statements appropriately. There may be times when we don't want those break statements in there. For example, when we have we want it to be multiple different things. Maybe we have this is maybe, let's say, John and Johnny. Let's just say they're the same person. So let's just make this John, and maybe he also goes by the name, let's say, JJ. All right. And then maybe I could just have him be one case, right? Because maybe he goes by John, he goes by Johnny, but however we want to set this up. And maybe I could have another case in here. Case Johnny. All right. So it's a very easy way for us to say, hey, we have a student who has multiple names or nicknames they go by. And again, there now, if I put in, let's say, John, we get that intended output. But if we wanted to separate these as individual ones, then that's, of course, where we want to make sure that those break statements are in place. So there is some nice flexibility here with how we do this. Like, for example, when we looked at the ice cream flavors, I had 3, 4, and 5 all function the same because I wanted those to give the same output. So it's a great way for if you want to have something have the same output, you can cut those break statements out of there, or you can have multiple different things output. Just remember how those are going to behave if you don't use those break statements in there. Now, I will show one more example real quick here. Let's just go ahead and just add one more case statement here. So let's just say case. And let's just say Stacy. And let's do a system.out.println and just say looking like an all-star. And if I don't put this in here, now notice I don't have a break statement here. All right. Now let's just go ahead and put in Stacy. All right, we get looking like an all-star. Hey, Stacy is in my group because, again, what did we not put in here? We didn't put in that break statement. So, again, this is the important thing to keep in mind if you are starting to use switch statements instead of using an if-else statement of how you handle it. If-else, it only handles anything that's explicitly inside of those curly brackets. Whereas here, because we don't have anything to really kind of differentiate it, we have to rely on the break statements to really kind of separate out those different cases. But again, there's some advantages here because if we have explicit things where, for example, like, let's say JJ, Johnny, and Johnny, and when we have other variations of his name, maybe he has other nicknames he goes by, these can all be different things that we can use to say these are different, but we're expecting them to give the same output. And notice one thing that we don't have here, though, is there's not a ignores case here. So we would have to, of course, create a different case. So if we wanted to have it a different spelling, or we had like a lowercase, again, these are things you kind of have to keep in mind if you're going to use switch statements versus if you're going to use an if-else.